just so I'm clear on this then, what you're saying in your mind, Monty, and in the minds of those running the University of Utah, being admitted into the former WAC Mountain West University of Utah, an institution with similar enough culture that it was in the same conference for 30 years with schools like UNLV and UNM, UTEP. This is the same now as being accepted into Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, Yale. Well, hot damn, the Ivy League goes four corners. Okay. Let's go! Welcome back to the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Watkins. And if you love college football, you're definitely in the right place. So before you forget, smash that red subscriber button, like our videos, and don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss one moment of the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. Folks, we're going to jump right into this today. I know we have been, and first I do want to say thank you so much for your support of the Otis Taylor content that we've been putting together this week since he passed away last Thursday on the 9th. We've had some pretty amazing guests, and I think we're moving in a good direction for maybe getting him into the Hall of Fame. I would ask that anybody who hasn't already been over to that channel, who's our regulars, go check it out. This is a man who is criminally being excluded from the Hall of Fame in our estimation. And if you go check it out, you'll see what I'm talking about. Just check it out. This is the spot on our screen here. It's our other channel at Way Past Due for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Otis Taylor. Thanks a lot. Now, let's jump in to more of that saga pitting the Pac-12 and Big 12 against each other in a fight to the death, I guess is what you would think of it as. So what we need to do, I mean, this past week has gotten a little, well, it's picked up a little bit, I'll tell you. Well, of course, last week you had the Big 12 conference tournament along with the Pac-12 conference basketball tournament in Las Vegas. But in Kansas and in Kansas City, you had the Big 12 conference tournament, and you started to hear people from around the Big 12 going on the record as to what they'd like to see. You had Coach Tang from K-State, along with Bill Self from Kansas, openly saying that they'd love to see Arizona for sure in the conference in view of the fact that it's another blue blood college program. Um, that, of course, has gotten the ire up of Pac-12 followers and those who, with their head in the sand, acting like there's not a problem with either the fact that they don't have a media deal or that the reports about the media deals that have been offered are being so less than what they were looking for money wise and lacking lacking a linear TV element to it. Um, but this week you got actually pretty good open dialogue coming from the Pac-12 and some of its presidents, most notably from uh, Robert Robbins. He's the president of the University of Arizona. He sat down with the Athletics' Stuart Mandel. It was described as a wide-ranging 50-minute interview President Robbins expects the Pac-12 to finalize its media deal within a couple of weeks, and also predicts that the per school yearly revenue will be better than the Big 12's media rights deal of $31.7 million per school when it starts in 2025. None of us aspire to win a bronze medal, Robbins said. I think we'll be the third best deal out of the Power Five leagues. But even though this was his thought, the third best of the Power Five leagues, he didn't conclusively say that his school was going to remain in the Pac 12, according to the story, instead, telling Stuart Mandel that he is going to wait on Commissioner George Kliavkoff to deliver the official deal in writing. And until we see it in a contract, we really don't know what it is. But we've got a pretty good soft circle number of what the per school number is going to be. Robbins also disputed various reports over the past several months that have suggested that the Pac-12's media deal would have either most or all of its games on a streaming service, saying that he expects ESPN to be the primary bidder for the media deal and that the majority of games will be on linear television, which is not anything that we're hearing from anywhere outside of the Pac-12. Now, okay, that's not what we're hearing, but let's go on. On perceptions that the Pac-12 is on the brink of collapse, Robbins answered that I think Brett Yormark is a heck of a salesman, and Endeavor, a Hollywood agency working with the Big 12, is a good PR firm, and they're working at it. And you, the media, speaking of Mandel, are buying what they're selling. He said that he is waiting to see the deal to make an informed decision about his school's athletic conference plans, but said that he is confident about the media rights deal being good enough for everyone to agree to it. But he does admit that he was more confident in that last summer, like before the Big 12 made a media deal with ESPN and Fox, right? He's quoted as saying, back last summer, I was even more confident than I am now. Because it was before ESPN and Fox made a deal with the Big 12. I was even more confident than I am now because there's a lot of stuff that's happened, like ESPN and Fox making a deal with the Big 12. ESPN Disney has laid off some people. The economy's not going great. Some of the tech companies laid off some people. So I don't think the climate is as good as it probably was back in the summer before ESPN and Fox made a deal with the Big 12. But this is where you naturally have to start to ask yourself, folks, how does this support what he said at the start of the interview with Stuart Mandel? He was talking about the bronze medal at the start of the interview, about the yearly revenue in the Pac-12 being better than the Big 12's when all is said and done, that the Pac-12 has a pretty good idea of a soft circle number, what they're expecting to get year after year. And he expects ESPN, unbeknownst to anyone else, to be the primary bidder, and for the majority of games to be broadcast on linear television. None of these things seem to be matching up with whether you want to call it the Big 12 narrative or the narrative of ESPN or Dennis Dodd or Pete Tham or any of these other guys, Stuart Mandel included. A lot of the reports that are coming out are completely the opposite of that, saying that we've heard anywhere from 20 to 25 million all streaming. We've heard majority streaming. The only thing that I keep hearing about ESPN is that they might do one game a week for the Pac-12, and that would be it. Now, in view of the fact that he's saying almost the opposite, okay, so despite the fact that what he said, that everything he said leading up until this point. Okay, so this is where you naturally have to start to ask yourself, how does what he's said just now supporting what he said at the start of the interview when he was talking about the bronze medal media rights deal, when he was saying that he expected the Pac 12 per school revenue share to eclipse that of the Big 12 of $31.7 million, and that he expects ESPN to be a primary bidder on the media rights deal, and that the majority of their football games will be held on linear television. All of these things are completely opposed to what you're hearing from everywhere else. Um, but unlike the brass at Utah, whose comments we'll get into momentarily, Robbins doesn't seem to be in his argument saying the opposite of what Mandel himself is saying, or Dennis Dodd, Pete Thamel, about all these things. He's not disagreeing with the same level of indignance or defiance, even of what maybe you're seeing like coming out of Utah, what you're hearing coming out of Utah, which we're going to get into a little bit of that in just a moment. Because even despite characterizing the Big 12 and Endeavor as trying to sell the media on an imminent collapse for the Pac 12, there's none of this bashing the Pac 12 as the truck stop 12 or the flyover 12 conference. He didn't take this opportunity to tell Bill Self to give him a break or otherwise make everyone believe that if his Arizona school was to leave and join the Big 12, that somehow the student body would get a little dumber. He actually comes off as, well, I think completely complimentary of Brett Yormark and its PR partner Endeavor. Then calls the Big 12 an attractive destination because of the fact that it is a dominant basketball powerhouse. And he admits that it would be kind of fun being in the Big 12. Then in one paragraph, the double talk goes to the extreme as he begins describing news reports from The Athletic, from Dennis Dodd, and from Pete Thamel as speculation and fear mongering. But in the very next breath, tells everyone that just like Dodd, Thamel, and Mandel have reported for weeks now, that all it would take for the Pac 12 to blow up is for Arizona and Colorado to leave. The Arizona president thinks so highly of the Big 12, even that the next thing he says is probably going to blow you away. The day that Texas and Oklahoma announced they were going to the SEC, I started pushing the narrative of, why don't we take the other 8 Big 12 schools right now? I wanted to call former Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlesby and say, why don't you just come on over here? Make it the Big Pac 20 or whatever you want to call it. Maybe it's not as big a deal as the Big 10 or the SEC, but that would have been a pretty good deal. And that would have avoided all this poaching and maneuvering. But wait, it gets better. When he continued to explain that he believes Kliavkoff and the rest of the conference presidents missed the league's best shot, with Bowlesby likely retiring as he did, leaving Kliavkoff as the new commish of the Big Pac 20, and then finishing his thought off with a clear "I told you so" to his fellow conference presidents, saying that if everyone had taken his advice, we would be having a different conversation today. But that didn't happen. In other words, Kliavkoff would have kept his job and not been humiliated at every turn since Big 12 Brett arrived on the scene and proceeded to run circles around the clearly overmatched Pac-12 Genius Commissioner. Now, this one's good. How many Pac-12 presidents supported this idea, though, of bringing all the rest of the 8? Zero, he said with a laugh, according to the story from Mandel. I got to tell you, folks, when you read the headline of this story, Arizona President Robert C. Robbins, Pac-12 media deal will be better than Big 12's. And then the first few paragraphs of the story, your initial thought is that old Bob Robbins is going to toe that Pac-12 company line, tell everyone there's nothing to see here. We're going to stay together as the conference of champions, and the Big 12's media circus isn't going to change a thing. That's what you feel like you're about to read. But then it's almost as if he just can't help himself. Bob becomes a little giddy, just a little giddy. He starts thinking out loud about Arizona's future in that powerhouse of hoops, Big 12. Then tops off his Jormark Big 12 love fest with a good old-fashioned nanny boo-boo, you're all as dumb as doo-doo, for good measure. Before excitedly talking about Arizona's new student pool in the Lone Star State, telling everyone that even though the Pac-12 is going to be fine and win that bronze medal in the next couple of weeks, I'm looking beyond just sports recruiting. I'm looking at Texas being our next California for regular students. That's been our biggest growth area for students coming to the U of A. It's been very purposeful on our part as a strategy to try to go get those students. So if we got to play games there, wow, that'd be huge. Again, now when you can contrast that with even Arizona State President Michael Crow, who this week was talking to the student newspaper at ASU and said that the school is committed to the Pac-12. There have been no discussions with the Big 12 conference on moving, but he added, there's been discussions between everyone everywhere on all things related to where our conference is going and where stuff's going to end up and what's happening. But we are committed to the Pac-12. The Athletic describes Crow as loyal to the Pac-12, a longtime supporter of even Larry Scott at a time when even most of the rest of the Pac-12 presidents were questioning his decision-making. And his verbal commitment to the Pac-12 here seemed to echo his allegiance to the conference when in the past he said ASU better aligns with the Pac-12 membership and that he considers Arizona State a West Coast school. And then there's Utah, which I told you a few months ago is not taking a potential move with the same temperament as old Arizona Wildcats President Robert Robbins. According to the Monty Show, and this is really, I'm going to say this first and foremost, this is the only place that I'm really hearing this. And he has a lot of sources that tells him all this stuff that you don't ever hear from anybody else. So according to the Monty Show, sources at Utah have told him and Jake that they have expressed to the Big 12 they are not a fit academically, and they fear they would lose educational revenue joining the Big 12 conference. Oh, good. For a minute there, I thought we were going to get something new out of the old Utes. No, it appears that Monty was simply regurgitating more of what we already knew about why Utah is having its public hissy fit. The school is just sticking to its Big 12 special ed narrative and reiterating a strong belief by university officials that maybe by osmosis, subjecting their athletes to Big 12 conference sports will hurt them academically. I know you probably don't want to hear this, Big 12 fans, but it really does make sense if you think about it. Because, they're going to have to move the University of Utah to downtown Dallas and set it right next to SMU. Maybe go to class in the Big 12 while they're on a road trip. Um, and they'll be missing out on all their AAU research that they would be doing on road trips if they were still in the Pac-12. That makes sense, doesn't it? Of course it doesn't. But I'm going to reiterate what I said on the Tuesday live show, and I'll tell you again that I have just about decided that Brett Yormark's comments during last week's Big 12 tournament, that any invitation to a Pac-12 school would only come if the school in question was a, quote, culture fit. The old culture fit word. Now, I know the culture word has been tossed around by Pac schools other than Utah. But let's be honest. It's that uppity Ute faithful that seems most intent on cutting off its nose to spite its face when it comes to the possibility of joining the Big 12. Quite frankly, I now believe that there is no way in hell that Brett Yormark extends a membership offer to Utah. No way in hell. And Monty's going to sit there and tell you that this is not a negative in terms of Utah, or nor is it making a mistake by drawing its line in the sand and saying it's not going. He literally said, brace yourself, academics will always come first at Utah, the same way that they come first at Stanford. Monty, you are literally elevating Utah, a school that has been in the Pac-12 for all of 10 minutes, and which has been an AAU member school for approximately the same amount of time, to the same level as Stanford. Academic level, the same academic level as Stanford. So just so I'm clear on this, what you're saying, Monty, is that in your mind and in the mind of those running the University of Utah, receiving admission to the University of Utah is now like being accepted into Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton? Hot damn. The Ivy League goes four corners, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Come on, fellas. Here's the deal. There's a reason why Utah is saying this out loud more and more all the time, because they've said it out loud enough that they've pissed off people in the Big 12 enough. And apparently, Brett Yormark, if you look at what he said, as I was talking about on Tuesday, he made sure to say that anybody they invited would have to fit the culture of the Big 12. That's never been a narrative of the Big 12, but it always seems to be the words coming out of the Utah's mouth. And again, this is the vitriol you got coming out of Utah. Arizona State's playing the good soldier, but I didn't really take what Michael Crow said as feeling like they fit, that the school fits the Pac-12 better than it would the Big 12, or that it's a West Coast school. Those comments were in the past, not right. It wasn't this week. And then when you start talking about Robert Robbins, the president of Arizona, he'll tell you that they're going to have a better deal than the Big 12 and have linear television as the major portion of their games will be on linear TV, with ESPN as the major bidder, and then turn around and tell you he thinks that it would be fun to it would be fun to be in the Big 12 conference. That he attempted to get the rest of the Pac-12, invite the entirety of the rest of the Big 12 and make a Pac-20, and they turned it down. And so now, we're having this conversation when we wouldn't be. It's a lot of for being, he's going. It seems like Robbins is going through the motions in a way that obviously Utah isn't. But it's funny to me that now Utah, when, again, this is their 10th or 11th year in the Conference of Champions, and they're still on this kick that your AAU status rolls away from you. I mean, somehow we're all supposed to believe that, the AAU member school is gonna take away your status of doing that. You're gonna have to miss out on all your AAU research and research dollars. And so it's just not going to be feasible because of that. It makes zero sense what they're talking about. Why even, and Monty's even said this before on occasion, and that he's been told by many of his quote sources that none of this is going to matter because you're an AAU school, you're already an AAU school. It just doesn't matter. And they're not going to stop think about what we're talking about. Do you really believe that becoming an AAU school and doing all that and those research dollars, that because of where your football team plays on Saturdays, the athletic conference in which you compete is going to change anything about the AAU? It's a stupid narrative. It continues to be a stupid narrative. And I think that, unless I'm just completely reading this wrong, it did not sound to me like Stuart Mandel's article. It wasn't in the tone of indignance when it came to Robbins. It just wasn't. It didn't seem like he was upset the way you see Utah being upset. And even Arizona State stopped short. Michael Crow didn't seem like he was that sure about it anymore. I guess we're going to have to wait and see, but I'm glad to know that, now you can, if you get a kid into Utah, it's like sending them to Harvard. Hot damn. What a great school. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it. This content. Let me know what you think, or in the comments below. Hey, let me know what you think, guys. Is the end near? And have we all been wrong that, and everybody that seemed to be in the know, is everybody wrong in concern of what the Pac-12 deal will look like? Is it going to look like what Robbins said, even though he turned around and mostly seemed giddy about being a Big 12 member and working with Brett Yormark? I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already done that. And folks, make sure that please, you can always help out, support the show with tips, either through Cash App, Venmo, there below here, or you can just hit that super chat heart and help us out with that. We have another live stream coming up on Tuesday. Still looking to do some work with a couple of the guys from the Florida stream, and we'll continue talking about some of that. There is some recruiting info coming up, and starting to look good for these Oklahoma Sooners. And Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes continue to be in contention for some of the biggest recruits in the country for the 2024 class. We'll get into all that and more this week on the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast. We'll see you on the next one.